welcome, Maureen. Thank you for being a guest today on my show. This is my second time you're on the show, and this is actually the second season, so thank you.
Awesome. I'm so glad to be here, and I just love everything that you do, so I'm really grateful to spend some time with you.
Yes, and likewise. I just love all the work that you're doing, your book, and you have a second book coming out too, but primarily we're going to talk about your first book. Congratulations on it. I have it here. It's Giant Love Song, a memoir. Mm-hmm. And congratulations on that, Maureen.
Thank you. You know that it's a big thing to deliver a book, and you've delivered a couple yourself. And there's the process of writing, and then there's the delivering it, and then there's the promotion. There's just a lot of hats that you wear, and so it is definitely an act of love. You really have to be committed to the process of it. So yeah.
Yes. And in fact, I'm going to ask you about that. And yes, it's funny that you say that, because I definitely understand what that's like, from sort of the idea, okay, I'm going to write a book. And then that's just the beginning of this giant journey. There's so much to it, with the editing and, writing it, of course, and promoting it and all that stuff. It's a project that doesn't end just when it's published. It's actually, the project is actually just another phase begins.
Right.
So it's an incredible process. So I wanted to ask you, what was behind the decision to write the book?
Well, I think the main impetus for writing it was the last story that I tell about being with my father at the end of my mom's life, and hearing his story and realizing and experiencing the transformation that happened through hearing his story. And his story was that he had gone through the same exact thing that I was going through, but I never knew that about him. I never knew that he was, I never thought of him being as a boy. I never thought of him being having a mother, and up to that point, I never met anybody who's lost their mom. And so I didn't think that I would live through it. And so experiencing the transformation that happened through his sharing his story with me was revolutionary to me on so many levels. And it gave me hope. And I knew that that experience clung to me that was when I was, 14 years old, and I finally wrote it when I was 50. So that experience clung to me, and kind of begged to be expressed, my entire life. And I was able to express it and use the idea that stories transform lives in a lot of things that I do. Like, Voice Box is a place where I support people in telling their stories, or a spiritual speakeasy is my spiritual community where I ask, like, what do you think? It's not just me talking to you, it's a conversation. So I always knew that was like a part of my ministry, but this was, I think, the catalyst of why I appreciate storytelling. And this was a way of my showing the world of how impactful one well-placed story could be. So that was it.
And it's so funny that that you start right off in this interview talking about that, because that's exactly towards the end the profound impact that I was having with you as you wrote it and explained it. And I'm actually going to ask you about that very issue. The fact that it's funny, at one point you write that your dad's life didn't begin with your birth, and it's common as children, we cannot imagine our parents before us. They're like, our life is their beginning of their life, like I said, from a child's perspective, or a teenager.
Right.
And you explore and you touch on that, how you realize that your father is a person too, like not just a dad, not just the giant, not just dad. He's a person. And it's just so touching. I'm getting chills just even thinking about it, how you can see him as a little boy. And I think that, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but an awareness came around me when I was reading this, that that's the beginning of compassion for others. I think when we realize that sort of a deeper, truer compassion, that our parents aren't just our parents. It's not just mom and dad. They're people too. And I think that having that awareness early in life, as you did, kind of just as the beginning of compassion for people. And you're such a compassionate person, and your life's work is about compassion for others.
Yeah, and
What are your thoughts on that?
well, it's very much based on perception too. And I know you wrote that book on perception, the people, of how we're
Yeah.
seeing them. And we define our parents as our gods, basically, our invincible gods. So one of my gods is literally dying, which gods are not supposed to do.
Right.
And the other one is telling me that it was once a boy. And I'm like, what? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So, but it's exactly what you're saying. The perception of the limited consciousness can be so focused on just how it serves the individual. But to be able to see somebody as faceted, I mean, we are all so faceted.
Yes.
I mean, we are mother, we are whore, we are helpful, we are harmful, we are Hitler, we are holy, we are all of these things. And to begin to, I think it's the beginning of recognizing that we are all one. So we're all one with everything. And as we start to creep towards that awareness and outside of our own personalities and perceptions, it's trippy. It's trippy out there being one with everything, and
Yeah.
and an appreciation for it. But you're right. I think the first thing that does come in is a great deal of compassion for the human experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because like you said, we realize that our gods, which are our parents when we're little, are people too, and all those experiences are just the same, and I just thought that was so powerful in your book. I really do. I mean, I just enjoyed that so much. And the other thing that's interesting about the book is, and we have some similarities too. I grew up in a large Roman Catholic family, Italian family outside of New York, and you were a big Irish Italian family, Irish Catholic family, and all that. So I can totally relate to all that stuff about the Holy Communion and the weeping mother and Jesus and blah 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 blah, all stuff. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But now you teach a course in miracles and stuff like that. And what I was interested to know, and I kind of made my own sort of connections about this, but how, like, the course in miracles, when because now it's been so long since this has happened. Of course, it's still well, you have a different perspective, like you said, or perception of it. And how does the Course in Miracles apply? How can you see all those principles applying to that era in your life? Like, now that you're like an adult and you look back, like, you see all.
Well, I think one of the main principles is that, nothing happens by mistake, that there are no mistakes, that everything is, that everything's either love or a call for love. And during this time, this experience, I was absolutely in a call for love. And I was, just trying to pretend and that it wasn't happening. And
Yes.
evading the situation. So I was literally working from fear. And going to school, trying to control things and keep things normal until I can't. And we get to that point where we just can't, and we have to surrender and let go of our little agendas and see what's there. And what's wonderful is when we finally let go of our little agendas and we look towards the thing that we think will annihilate us, that's the crucifixion and then the immediate resurrection. Like, I was given, because I had looked everywhere else, and I finally just got still, and in that moment, that's when God can really get our attention and give us the very thing that we're looking for, and it's always so much closer than we think, So,
Yeah.
literally in the book, I'm spending this time running and evading and denying, and finally I get to the end of the day where I just sit down on my mom's deathbed, and that's when my father has a chance to lay some wisdom on me. And I always, it reminds me to be still. Like, all of our answers exist in that ability to just be still and be with God. But so that's what I'd say is one of the things. But it's come a long way from that fearful child. But because of having had that experience, it helps me to be beneficial and helpful towards other people who have lost parents or who have experienced that deep grief. So it's used for good. And in the same way, like I was shown, like not only will you rise from this, but you're one day you'll tell your story and that could help somebody. So it was like in my father, I got to see a possibility for my future too.
Yes, yes. And I like that concept, like you just said, of being able to, that your story can help others. Because so many times, you know, we can't see the good in what's happening, or it just seems all bad, like it's all bad. Yet now your book and your work is helping so many others that may be struggling with similar situations. And it's just, you know, that whole experience, you know, because you're such a blessing to everybody. You, specifically you are. And, you know, like, it's just amazing how you can, oh, like all these years later, see that, you know, the sort of blessing or different perspective of it, you know, of it, because it was such a difficult thing.
And I think that that might have been the first time that I had that transformation. But you know, like many of us going through a divorce or going through cancer or going through all of these things, it's like even if you've gone through a transformation, you still will find yourself in those classrooms and think this one will really kill me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to make it this time. Yeah.
All of those other times. But yeah, so I don't think we ever stop meeting this classroom of invitation to a higher good, resistance, it's finally a surrender, and crucifixion, resurrection. And the crucifixion is always for me like dying off of what's never going to serve you and never has served you. So it's always like dropping a baggage of fear. So you know, that we are so much more capable than we give ourselves credit for.
Yes. And it's times like that we can see that, especially looking back. And it's, and you mentioned a good point, because I know that since the book, you know, where it leaves off, you have lived so much life, like since then, so much has happened in your life, and the principles and that whole experience. And as you got older with the Course in Miracles and all your new thought and your teaching, your spiritual work, like you said, it's not that it's a know-it-all, or like, yeah, I've experienced this. There's always going to be challenges and stuff in life, no matter who you are or what you've experienced. So, but it is always wonderful when your experience can help others in some way, you know, your wisdom. Oh,
yeah, it's always like, you know, you're coming down the road thinking you know what's going to happen next, and then you get blindsided, and it's like, but I think the you know, the more spiritually mature we get, the more we do our spiritual practice, the less ruffled our feathers are going to be, because we get to rest on, you know, some of the stuff that we've already been through. So, you know, I think the latest thing that I went, like I said, I went through cancer, I went through a divorce, I went through addiction. The latest thing I went through was with my daughter, who came out as transgender. And I was like, well, I didn't see that coming. You know what I mean? And so there's always like this, like letting go of your own script, and then being curious and being open-minded and mourning what you thought was going to happen and accepting the new story. And so I think it's just this kind of storytelling is beneficial for everyone to get to see, like us, we really do rise eventually. And then the most important thing is to learn how to let go. Right. You know, learn how to let go of your own little ways and little thoughts and little agendas, because they are never as good as what the universe has planned for us.
Right, exactly. And that builds trust in spirit or in the universe, when you realize that, you know, that like our little thoughts can't even measure up to whatever spirit has in store, even during something where you know, that maybe seems strange or we weren't expecting or whatever. Like, you know, it's always got our back, so to speak. And so and that builds trust in spirit or in yourself too, that you can get through these things, you know.
Yeah,
so it's wonderful. But so I wanted to also ask you, well, actually I think we're actually running out of time, but I wanted to ask you about your sort of your next projects. I know that you have another book coming out, and can you tell us about that one?
Sure. The next book is called The Spiritual Vixen's Guide to an Unapologetic Life. And it starts with an ending, of my relationship with my former husband. And it's the day that I find out that he's leaving me for Miss Universe, and I'm just devastated. And then all of these synchronicities start to weave into the story. And I take the reader on a journey of about 2 years, a 2-year process. In the first year, I just decided I wasn't going to date anyone. And I started to just get intimate with my own truth and my own practices, and what was true for me and what wasn't true for me, and what I had just accepted without questions, what I had been apologizing for that didn't need an apology. And so at the end of each chapter, there's a little tool that I use that I invite the reader to begin to use. And so it's a little bit of a workbook and a story, and I think it's pretty funny because I get myself into a lot of tight corners, and and I'm kind of unapologetic about it, and it's pretty raw, and it deals with spirituality and a woman's place in and finding her own spiritual authority. So those are things that I really was excited about writing about.
Yeah, and I think it's perfect to follow this book, Love Song. You know what I mean? Because this was written from, which I love so much that you really captured the sort of innocence of youth, and it was written from that perspective. You could really, really understand it and just be there with you. And we've all have been through these ages, so it's like this. And then for the second book that you're describing is perfect, for to follow this, because it shows the growth and
or lack of growth.
or lack of growth. Yeah. So it's really amazing. But well, I just want to thank you for appearing on the show, and thank you for your work. Thank you for this book. I mean, it is just beautiful. It's just amazing. There's so much to it. It's just gorgeous. The way you weave in sort of the backstory and music, the music theme, the lyrics throughout. I mean, it's just beautiful. So thank you for this book. It's amazing to the world. The world is going to thank you for it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And thanks for having me back on your show.
Yes.
And continued blessings.
Yes, you too.